Hello, Friday. Again, a bit of an abnormal presentation today because it looks like I'm going to have to make some decisions about my big meta concepts, or as Richard would call them, tabs on the website, or on this, what I described as a stretched blog yesterday. And if I can think of other tabs and know how to fill them, it might be best that this Over the Peak goes to being an official blog. No, an official website, not a stretched blog. But first, I'm going to have to work out what could be described as my priorities. Now, to have priorities, it's best to be believing in something. Like I could believe in God, or Manchester United, or vegan food, Greg Mankiw. But I don't really believe in any of that. So to have my tabs, really I need a meta concept on top to dominate why those tabs are there. What normal language would be, I have to sort myself out. The first idea was to have 3 tabs. The Over the Peak was to be divided into society, energy and money. I still would need to know something better to think there was something better idea than that, but that I think was so amorphous that nothing came of it, because they all intertwine so much. And this is the problem to have any more tabs, is that society always interacts with money, which interacts with energy, and to try and separate them is to be separating things that really shouldn't be separated. But then that's the website problem, that you've got the one page, and if it's a mega concept that is channeled through the one single page, there's going to be shortcomings, great shortcomings, because you can't get a huge amount through a small hole. And that's what basically a website opening page, front page is. And then any attempts to make it's fine for shopping for hardware or something, but actually to talk about what we talk about here on Over the Peak, to actually divide it into tabs or smaller concepts, is a very difficult thing. So I'm going to have to think on it. Right, where are we going to go today? So I'll think on that, and if I can expand my thinking by asking you to think on it, and if you can recommend or suggest, I suppose, any other website that does a similar job, that you don't get lost by going through tabs, how we could do this better, I think I need to know, because I just can't think of anything at the moment. But I have thought of those 3 things, the society, money and energy. Certainly in money was the first thing that came to mind, to actually make it a bit, try and explain my pyramidical thinkings on it. Like, we all have pyramidical thinkings. We have things at the top that we think are the most important, and they pervade the next 2 things, which are the next 2 things that are important, right down to the bottom, which are just everyday general things. But if we want to refer to those general everyday things quickly, we refer quickly to the top of the pyramid, to the big meta concept, to know instantly, well, what do I think of this? What do I think of Greg Mankiw and his economics course? I can go up to some of the top layers of the pyramid and go, instantly, it's a waste of time. I'm not saying it is, although I think mainly it is, but that sort of thing, that way of working things. So I'm going to have to work out the blocks. And all I can say is the best thing I can do for me is to look back at my recent history and know what has grabbed me. Like, I did 18 months, 2 years of Mises.org and Austrian economics, and thought it was very brilliant at explaining basic concepts, and that would be certainly the information I would go back to if there was a huge, something like economic nuclear wipeout, and friends and people around here needed advice about how to start community all over again. I would retrieve that sort of information, but I find it effectively useless in the complex world economies that we have now. It just didn't bite. It was all gone in, but it hasn't bitten as any sort of explanation or helping for what we have as problems in the world. Okay, I will have started, if I do this as a presentation, the opening thing is instability in the financial markets, sources and remedies. Now, this is a thing that I've got up because it's excited me. There's very little that really what you could call excites me. There's something about central banks that has started to worry me, and Steve Keen getting a grant from INET has excited me. Because when I've gone through all these things, I ask myself, why have I just latched on to, I can do 18 months of intensive, and when I do something I do it intensively, as in I'm downloading all the videos and audios and playing them and watching them and reading them all day long, working in the garden, on the computer, whatever it might be. I'm a pretty intensive type. So I've got all this Austrian stuff going in. And then Steve Keen comes along and I go, aha. Now, I'm not going to go into the deep philosophy of what I am and what goes aha, but we must recognize it in all of us. This is what we do. There are things that grab us and there are other things that don't grab us, and whether we can claim responsibility for it or claim points, be proud of the fact that we've latched onto something, I think is dubious. All we can know is Greg Manicue, no. Austrian economics, no. Whatever, no. Steve Keen, kating, yes. Why? I've no idea. But that's the way we operate. So now Steve Keen has got his grant from INET. And why INET? I've listened to the two INET conferences, the one in London and the one in Bretton Woods, over and over and over again. Some presentations 15, 20 times. Others, like keynote speeches by Larry Summers, twice maximum. But I do generally listen to things over and over again. I'm not the sort of person that listens generally once. If it's attracted me, I'll let it run. And let it run and let it run and suck all I can from it. But of course I am not sucking. It's just happening that is what is happening. So I was never put off by the fact that INET is George Soros's money. I've always been attracted to the fact that this is a very good effort of doing something. There seem to be a lot of open minds at the back of it, even George Soros's open mind at the back of it, as well as his open wallet. But obviously most all of the first 2 years' presentations have all been regurgitations of old thinking, because that's all we have. it's very rare that anybody comes up with anything what we could call new thinking. We get in through our past history all sorts of inputs, and they cogitate around in here and sometimes come out in something that we could call new, innovative, new. But generally it's regurgitations of old stuff. What we have are people that learn stuff. Most of these economists are learners. They have been to school, college, university, learnt stuff, but it just so happens that time goes on and they are given their degree, and then they have to do something, and then they have to stand up in front of a class and teach this stuff as though they know it. But of course they do not know it. All they're doing is reacting to circumstances in a programmed sort of way. They have learnt all this stuff that has got them to pass their exam, that gets them this certain salary, that gets them to go to these dinner parties and cocktail parties where they discuss with similar sorts of people in a similar sort of language, similar sorts of things. They don't really know it. It's just what's interacting and happening, that they happen to be standing in front of a class at Stanford University and spewing this garbage. And of course a lot of this garbage has been spewed out in the INET conferences. So I'll leave that a bit and go on to this Steve Keen thing and see if I can tidy this video up with a bit of information. So we can see this is, so he's got his grant to do something with his programs, actual computer programs, to program systems to show how his way of thinking of economics works. So he's presented a paper, which is this paper, this one link, and he will probably get to speak at the Berlin conference, which will be in a couple of months or so. But he'll obviously only get about 10 minutes, where this, how long is this paper? 30-odd page PDF or something. It's only small. But again, it's hard to read unless you know some of the people that he's talking about. Let's go into the introduction and see how we go. In the seemingly never-ending aftermath to the economic crisis that began in 2007, there is little disagreement that financial markets are characterized by instability rather than stability. Now, that being the opening sentence, you really have to know something about the economics that are taught, that really base their I don't know, their wording. I don't want to use their words because I think they're such stupid words that they use, interdisciplinary words that they talk to each other, but they really don't make sense. It's just like talking in a code just for the sake of talking in a code. But their models say that there is a certain stability that the economic world will return to. It's got an urge always to return to a stability, an equilibrium. And they know what they mean by stability and equilibrium. At least they think they do, because it got them to pass exams and get paid quite a lot of money for teaching it. But just because you get a lot of money for teaching something doesn't make it right, and this is what Steve Keen's pointing out. Even Eugene Fama, the most influential proponent of the capital asset pricing model, CAPM, which is not bad, CAPM's not bad, from my limited knowledge, now acknowledges that CAPM is strongly contradicted by the data. Now I won't go into that. I'll go on to another page, because I think I've got 3 to do today. Yeah, and the way I'm wobbling my mouth today, it'll take time. Endogenous money. Now this is the semi-exciting thing, because all of this information that I've been imbibing over the last 4 or 5 years about this money stuff, there's one website in England that has kind of dedicated it to saying, look, banks print up money from nowhere when they lend it to people. Otherwise, it's incredibly difficult to come across the facts of the matter. Even these, that I've been going on about for months now, these reserves, and whether these reserves, new reserves from, whether it's QE or Eltro, can or should or would be lent into the real world, it's information that's impossible to find. Because the experts don't talk that way. The medium experts that think they know something talk in another way, and amateurs talk in another way, but nobody seems to actually what I'd call know. And this is the problem with this economic stuff, that to a greater extent, the more you look into it with an open mind, you find that nobody actually knows anything. And if what they are spouting, that they get a lot of money to pay to teach, if there's something that doesn't jive with it, or does jive with it, I forget how that expression should be used, then they just don't talk about it. They'll not talk about it in teaching, they won't talk about it in the common room of the university, they won't talk about it in dinner parties or cocktail parties, they just will not write about it in papers, they just will not talk about it. Endogenous money. Endogenous money. Banks play a crucial role in Minsky's analysis because they can endogenously expand the money supply in response to entrepreneurial or Ponzi finance demands for funds. Now, most of us together, we've been either on YouTube or here, we can sit and look and translate that one sentence. But most people can't. They wouldn't have a clue what that meant. And this is another of the problems, that the economists, are talking their funny language over there. Politicians do whatever politicians do, but if the politicians run into money problems, they bring this strange herd of quacking things in to talk nonsense at them, and the politicians won't understand an absolute word of it. Not a word of it. Because really, when it comes down to it, the economists don't understand a word of it. All right. But this is one of the things that they just don't talk about. Banks play a crucial role in Minsky's analysis because they can endogenously, now endogenously, it's a normal word, but it's not used in normal life much, endogenously and exogenously, endogenously from the inside out, or the inside staying inside, exogenously from the outside affecting the other. Exogenously from the outside, endogenously from the inside. Expand the money supply in response to entrepreneurial or Ponzi finance demands for funds. And he's put in entrepreneurial because that's what they do talk about, and it keeps people like Austrians happy if you throw in entrepreneurial every now and then. But what it means is businesses, entrepreneurial, or Ponzi finance, people that want to buy a third home because the price of housing's going up, are going into banks, and banks just print up some money, hypothetical digit money, and give it to them. And that's what that means. But it's never explained explicitly, and it's very rarely explained implicitly. This is kind of implicit because, although it's explicit, because it's being described in their language. He might say it in Berlin, and I think he will say it in Berlin, but it'll be, because it's his first speech to the INET, he won't say it in the language that we understand. Banks print money and give it to people, and knowing that the money has been printed and given to people, that money will go out into the community and then back into banks, so any reserve or capital requirements will be taken care of. There are two things there. One is it's hyper important that banks just print money from nowhere. It's not savings. And the second is you don't have you don't have to have the savings and multiplier to regulate the amount of loans that are given. It's hugely important, but from what I've found from a lot of research very rarely talked about. This emphasis upon the crucial role of banks can be tracked back to Minsky's PhD advisor Schumpeter, who we had yesterday in Schumpeter Destruction, which is capitalism in real working, where if a capitalist, like in the dot-com crash lost an awful lot of money for a lot of people, a lot of time, effort, stuff was wasted, but an awful lot of good stuff remains from that. That's the good part of capitalism, and the good part of capitalism is Schumpeterian destruction, which is all the stuff that was lost or wasted. It'll always happen. Not all good ideas are good ideas, and things fall by the wayside. That's Schumpeterian destruction. He, PhD advisor to Minsky, who argued that investment is not financed by savings, but the endogenous expansion of the monetary supply by banks. So simple, but all economics textbooks talk about savings rate affecting the lending rate, as it were, because lendings are predicated on savings. No, they're not. This is it. But the economists can't admit, no, they're not, because their models and what they stand up and teach runs completely contrary to that. They're not allowed free thought. There's no need for free thought. What's the point? You get a good tenure and salary and friends and life by just talking the talk. Why upset it by actually looking into the subject? Do I have one more page? I think I do. So we're going to get the INET conference in Berlin, which I'm quite excited about, and I'm quite excited about the INET website. It's coming on very slowly, but I think that's it's when you look at something and you go, breath of fresh air. I'm attracted to this. This is beautiful. This is nice. Where so much other stuff, like just about the whole of the Financial Times newspaper, electronic, and so much other stuff, 95% of stuff that's out there is just revolting. It pushes you away. You're not attracted to it. Even though the conventional answer to our question, where are we here? Do I need any of this? No, I'll just leave that. You can read it if you like. Follow the link. I think the PDF of his first paper is only 35 pages or something, so that's no trouble. And do I have a wrap up here? Yeah, well, I've got to go back to more blocks, because this is money. If the economists who are pulled in by government speak in this language that will be listened to, well, it won't be listened to by government. Government will just go blah blah and push it through. It's rather important that they get it right. If they're going to be believed, it's rather important that they get it right. But it's rather clear to me, and there's no reason why it should be clear to me. I don't think that I know I'm right, that they are wrong, and Steve Keen's right, and Steve Keen. Why should Steve Keen, one person, be right, when it's easy to find 99 other economists that say Steve Keen is wrong? It's very, very difficult. And I can't be expected to put things up and have a tab to say, this is what is right. How should I know that Steve Keen's right and 99 other economists are wrong? How can I know that the peak oilers have got it right when the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg and all these Financial Times run all these stories about all these journalists that say we're finding oil all over the place, gas all over the place, and there won't be any problems? I don't have the confidence in myself. I just don't work that way to say this is this, that is that. This is why most of the over-the-peak stuff is just basic reporting as much as I can. And I've put little opinions in, almost because I was asked to. because people don't like dealing in just reporting. They like a bit of opinion to go with it, either as an explanatory value or something that they can remember because, well, Mystic think this is about right. It gives them a shortcut to the understanding. But I've got no divine right to be picking the winners any better than the most stupid person you can come across. Just because I look into lots of it, lots of the time, absolutely no reason to believe that that will make me come up with any better sort of decision than somebody that just goes, duh, huh. Because we have this horrible problem of Steve Keen saying one thing and most all of the rest of the economics profession saying another thing. Why should Steve Keen be right? It's not the democratic thing to think. If it was democratic, we'd just go, well, the 99 must be right. It's a very tricky thing. And what I'm saying is I don't have the confidence in myself to be able to pick the tabs to say that this is right, that's wrong, that's rubbish, that's dangerous, we should go in this way, we should drop that idea because it's rubbish. I just don't have the confidence in myself. So it looks like we might just have to limp forward with Oh the Peak as it is. I might pay the money and put it on a better server so it's a bit snappier. But unless you can think of some other way that we can do this thing, I don't know a better way forward, because we've all got the option to put our stuff in here, but generally it's 90% me, and I do not have the to drag it into another place to put over better what I really believe, because I don't really have any really deep ingrained really believes. Leave it with you. Oh God, I've gone on again. Sorry to waste your time. No, obviously you're listening because you want to listen. So I hope you enjoyed, and I suspect I will make a video tomorrow on Saturday and see how we go. Thanks. Bye.